Hi and welcome to our new 3-part series on how to simplify your life. With me, Dylan.
And myself, Jane.
We have over 25 years experience of coaching and mentoring, and this series will help you to understand how you can declutter certain elements of your life.
Yeah, so to begin with, what I'd like to share with you is a simple diagram that Dylan's going to magically make appear now. And this diagram I often use to help explain to people the far-reaching impact that each area of their lives has on another and where we hold clutter in our lives. So we're going to begin today in this series on the physical layer. So that's all of the clutter that you have in your homes and then digitally on your computers, phones and other devices. And in following episodes, we're going to cover the impact that then has on your body, on your time and how you spend it, on your relationships, on your thoughts, and on your energy. So each of these areas are intrinsically linked. And as we make a positive change in one of them and start to declutter, it naturally has an impact on the other areas. The physical space that we're going to start with, that this episode is going to focus on, is quite often actually the easiest to begin with, because when you clear your physical space, you instantly see the results and experience the results, and that instantly affects your energy.
And you can easily see it as well. I mean, You can see the clutter in front of you.
Yes.
The clutter in the other areas you may not be so aware of, but this
absolutely.
Is obvious to you.
Yes, definitely. The clutter in other areas, as we'll cover in the other episodes, can absolutely be far more hidden. But even in our homes, sometimes there will just be objects that are sitting there in the corner that we just haven't really noticed or paid much attention to, and we're not actually day to day consciously aware that it has a draining effect on us. And by clearing those things out of your physical environment, you simplify your space, you lighten your space, and what we're going to talk about is how to do that. So although we say it's the easiest place because it has the most obvious impact straight away, it can also be the hardest to start with, right? I mean, otherwise none of us would have clutter in our homes, would we, if it wasn't hard?
It seems like a difficult task to get underway because you have an emotional attachment to some things as well. And you maybe say to yourself, I'm not quite ready to let go of that, or even think about letting go of that. And that means you put it off sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And putting it off can also be part of, as we discussed in one of our previous series about procrastination, and also the series about productivity, that it's time clutter. When do you have the time to get stuck in and clear your clutter if your time is already cluttered, if your time is busy and filled with being busy? So what would your top tips be for how to make a start on clearing your physical clutter?
I think first of all, arrange a time in your schedule to do the decluttering. Secondly, start small. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to do too much too soon. So just start with something and it will grow naturally from there. And thirdly, you need to ask yourself 3 main questions. 1, do you need it? 2, do you use it? And 3, do you love it?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no to any of those questions, then get rid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time to let it go. And it's the letting it go that often is the bit that tugs at people and makes it hard, when there is, like you mentioned earlier, some kind of emotional attachment to the object. And usually that emotional attachment is really to the object, but to a person or to a time or a memory or something. And the fear that's often behind letting it go is that there's going to be a sort of symbolic representation of letting it go, that you're letting go of that person or that memory or that time or something. And that's where you need to make a distinction between the two. So letting go of an object doesn't mean that you're letting go of the person that gave it to you, or letting go of the memory. It can mean that if it's somebody that's given you something and you've actually long moved on from them, say you've been through a divorce and you've moved on from that person and you really don't want them back in your life again, you might be sitting on a sofa, for example, that belongs to an ex, and every time you sit on it you feel slightly peeved because you remember some of the bad things about that relationship. And in that instance, letting it go, it does actually mean letting that person go too. But more often than not, people really struggle with the objects that have been given to them by somebody that they cared about, still care about and love, but they don't particularly love the object or have a use for it, or they don't have the space for it anymore. And so it's then about almost affirming that the love between you and that person and the relationship you have absolutely remains beyond you rehoming whatever the item is, and that by rehoming it, you're freeing it up to be loved by somebody else. Because ultimately, if you don't really like it or love it, it's not bringing anything to you or your life, but it could be bringing masses to somebody else.
And that affirmation of affirming that you're not doing anything to the actual relationship, you're just letting go of an item, would that be a self-affirmation, or would that be an affirmation that you could actually then go to the person who gave it to you? Maybe not tell them you're getting rid of something, but just to reinforce that relationship, just so you get back in touch with them if you haven't spoken to them for a while or something.
It's really interesting that you bring that particular part up. So there's something important here, and a kind of a distinction I feel I need to make between the objects that you do want to let go that are associated with your past, and you've recognised you want to let go of your past, and that having that collection of items or that particular thing in your home associated with that is then therefore keeping you stuck in the past, keeping a part of you still connected with what you really need to move on from. And in that case, when you actually let those objects go, you probably wouldn't want to have any conversation with the person about the fact that you're letting go. So say, for example, imagine you have, Dylan, I hope you don't have, but you might have boxes and boxes of love letters from previous girlfriends, wives.
I definitely don't.
But if you did, you might just have had those in a loft and forgotten a long time about them.
I read them regularly.
Okay? You might have pulled them down, gone through them and been like, oh, I don't need this anymore. I've got no connection with this. Been really ready to let those things go, okay? And then out of the blue, when that weekend that you're getting rid of those things, you spontaneously receive a message from an ex that you've not heard from for years.
I'm still waiting.
There is a bit of a tug of some sort energetically, funnily, with these things. So although I'm saying it doesn't mean you're letting the relationship go in terms of something that whether you still really love and care about that person, there is some kind of energetic thread here, because when I work with people and help them to clear out their clutter, they 100% guaranteed hear from somebody when they've had to do this who they weren't really wanting to hear from. And it is that last stage of letting go. It's being really ready to say no, essentially, which we also covered in another episode. So to be prepared for that in terms of letting go of things that you're ready to move on from, and you're completely letting go of that person or place as well. But when it comes to the objects that you've had that you do have a connection, it might be something that would belong to a great grandmother or something, a family kind of object that there is a sentimental value to it, but you still don't like it, you still don't use it, and you really don't love it. You might have loved that person or loved the stories about them or loved something in that respect, but it's just time for that object to move on and find a new home. Then what you need to do is, like I said, yes, affirm to yourself that I still love this person and I'm setting myself free from the burden of having this object. Because ultimately, if that person really loved you, they would want you to be free, wouldn't they? They wouldn't want you to be burdened. So it's that is the distinction there.
So how would you approach each room in your house, for example?
Yeah, so as Dylan said earlier, start small so that you get started. And then once you get going, notice the areas that would make the biggest difference and go to those spaces. And then literally take the things and have some system that you set up yourself of, okay, these are the things that I can instantly rehome. So there was maybe a bag that's for, say, charity shop things to go and be rehomed. You may or may not want to sell some of the things that you're letting go of. So you might have another bag that's for things that you want to sell. Do you then have a pile of things that's just rubbish? Because quite often some people come to clear areas of their home And they might just have, stuff that's literally just fit for the bin. It couldn't be sold in a charity shop. It might literally be actual rubbish as well, or newspapers or things like that. So having a pile for those. And then a pile of I'm not sure yet. Okay, so sometimes you might come across something and you notice in your body, oh, this is charged, there's something here. But perhaps in 5 minutes time, the kids are coming home from school, or you've got an appointment that you need to be at, or something's going on, and you can't really go into those emotions to do the kind of real letting go in that moment. So those things can go in a I'm not sure yet pile. And then the key is to the next step. Get rid of what you can out of your space as quickly as you can. So the things that can go in the bin, get them in the bin, get them out of your house with the next rubbish collection. The things that are going to the charity shop, likewise. You don't want them sitting then in a cupboard or in the boot of your car or back up in the loft or something to wait for that rainy day when you're going to go to the charity shop. Get them moving, get them out. And keep doing that basically. Just keep repeating that process, coming back to the I'm not sure pile as and when you can, and like you said earlier, schedule for that to happen so it does happen. And the more you get through each of the rooms, each of your spaces, the lighter you'll feel and the better you will feel. So you'll instantly start getting the results.
And what happens if your I'm not sure pile is much bigger than your other two piles?
And this can happen. Sometimes there are things that you just aren't quite ready to face, and it's okay to acknowledge that and to then put them somewhere until you are ready to come back to them. And that might be that it's, a week's time, a month's time, it might even be a year's time,
And I guess the goal isn't to reach minimalism, it's just to reach a place or a space that you feel more comfortable in.
A place of balance, whatever that means to you. For somebody, it might be a minimalist sort of space that they're wanting to achieve to feel balanced. For other people, it's about the benefits that moving the stuff out that can be freed up brings in its own way, however little or much that is. But keeping things moving, I think, is the key. Making this a kind of a way of life almost, to a lesser or greater extent, in terms of if you've allowed things to accumulate massively, then you might want to bring in sort of this process of decluttering on a more regular basis, so it doesn't mean that you're coming to every 5-10 years,
But maybe behind that or in front of that is the process of accumulation. And how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, I think it's different for everybody really, in terms of how are the things creeping up into your life. Is there underneath that a kind of compulsive buying? Is it simply like we have children? They grow out of their clothes so quickly. So I feel like I'm constantly going through the wardrobe every season.
Me too.
It seems to
All the
fall
time.
on me. I quite enjoy it though. But I'm constantly doing a wardrobe kind of edit for them every season, because it's not just like when I come to do my own wardrobe of the season thinking, have I worn this item so much that I'm now tired of it, I don't love it anymore, and I don't want to wear it next year. Or I pull out, things from last year and think, yeah, no, this isn't me anymore, I've outgrown this. With children, they literally outgrow it physically and they won't be able to fit into it anymore. So there's a constant moving out of things. But some people will have never cleared out their children's or baby's clothes. And, for some mums to go to the baby clothes, if they've never cleared them out and the children are then primary school aged or secondary school aged, or even they're at university age and they're leaving home and somewhere in boxes and bags they've still got the baby clothes, that can be really emotional to then kind of bring themselves to let go of those clothes. So it's about bringing in a way that those items don't accumulate in the first place, and staying on top of things so that, like I said, there's movement, there's constant movement. You're freeing up space for the new to come into your life. But you're right, how does it seep in there in the first place? Sometimes it can be over consumerism, other times it's just part and parcel of everyday life that we are, week on week, month on month, year on year, buying new items to replace old items. When an old item's broken, rather than putting it somewhere in a corner or in a cupboard or a shed, which is quite easy to do for some people, especially if people have got larger homes and the space to do that, rehome it, get it out.
Or get it fixed and don't buy a new
Well,
one.
ideally,
Yeah.
absolutely. But like, say for example with phones, that's very
Yeah,
rarely
sure.
what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, we've got 4 phones in a little pile waiting to be
No, I've decluttered them already. They've gone.
waiting to have the information swiped off them so that they can
I have
be
actually done that,
rehomed.
to
So
be fair.
well done.
Excellent.
That was great.
From the first bit, so on the next bit. So we hope that has helped you to get stuck in to start clearing your space. And in the next episode,
Yes, we'll look at thought clutter and how to distinguish between positive and negative thoughts that you may be having, and how to talk more positively to yourself and clear out what doesn't need to be there so you feel less overwhelmed and more energised each day.
we'll see you next time.
Bye.